truth behind the disguise. They want us to go away, only our hearts do we obey. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. No ranks, no chains, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Change, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. No ranks, no change, just unity. One tribe, one light, one destiny. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo. Bucking the status quo, we gonna buck the status quo.
Check, check, check. We are live from St. Louis, Irreverent Warriors and Grunt Style Foundation. How's everybody doing out there in the world? We're having a gorgeous day here in St. Louis on this Friday. Looking forward to the big Silkies hike happening here tomorrow. I am joined with Will Wisner from the Grunt Style Foundation, of course, and our wonderful, famous John Lanius is our guest of today, and we're going to get into a lot about him, the most interesting man in the world, and also my mentor in a lot of different meditation arts that he will end up talking to us about today. But I wanted to first set the stage for today's episode by talking about our intentions for 2026. This is a really important time for us to think about, what do we want to accomplish in 2026? How do we want to become a better version of ourselves? And what can we do to help heal ourselves and heal so much mental health strife and stress that we're all dealing with at this crazy time, and we need to come together now better than ever. And the way we have to do that is by coming to peace with ourselves first, and then bringing that out to those around us. So let's at first let's talk about set our intentions that we're setting for 2026. Journaling is something that's really helped me heal, and I think what I've read about it is that for ADHD people, journaling is actually a huge hack for meditation that I wasn't aware of until maybe during COVID. I finally became aware of it. But when you write, your mind, all that monkey brain is able to calm down, and you're able to focus, and your mind is able to calm down as you put down all the things that are bothering you, or all the things that you want to do, and all the things that you want to work on, or the people you want to forgive. Something that was really meaningful to me was to make a list of all the things I needed to forgive myself for, and then all the things I needed to forgive others for. And I didn't notice this when I made the list at the time, but they are linked. There's links between what I need to forgive myself for to then things I was angry at others outside. It's all connected. And so when I think about my intentions for 2026, breath work and meditation, 10 minutes a day. So just getting more consistent, because I'll get into it and then I'll get away from it, and delegating more at work instead of trying to do it all myself. I'm sure you and I both share a little bit of that. And then also having difficult conversations sooner instead of hoping things will resolve over time. I think it's important to have difficult conversations sooner. So what about you, Will? What are you thinking for 2026?
Oh man, I'm still on the health train, dude. So I've got all the tools, all the things are assembled. I'm on a really good path. I feel with this new functional medicine approach I'm taking with the help of Dr. Eric Naputi. And we are aggressively going after some of the heavy metals and all that other good stuff. So I'm need to make better use of my hyperbaric chamber and my sauna and all of those things that go in with the detox. And it's just it's like kind of what you're pointing out, man. It's all about, is there enough time in the day to do all this stuff?
Yeah.
Well, you got to make it. And that's unfortunate. Then it comes down to priority. So I guess ultimately you could take all that wrap up and say, my intention is to get better at honoring the priorities that are screaming at me in my face.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so hard to do too, because when you're in the day-to-day, phone going off, busy, you forget to take care of yourself.
Oh man,
you forget to prioritize.
Absolutely. I'm almost to the point where I'm going to do one of those AI assistant things that answers my phone for me and like all the things all the time.
Right.
That would buy me a little bit of peace, I think. But
you need a robot.
I do. Well, it's kind of the AI's kind of a robot. I just am scared of the thing, man. I think it's like a demon you're going to summon and it'll come and suck your soul or something if you play with it for too long.
You never know. All right, John, your intention.
Well, first I want to say, Hugh and Will, it's such a great pleasure to be with you both. I have the utmost respect for the things that you guys do. You guys do such incredible work. It's an honor to work with you every year at Integration, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. But when you were talking about journaling, journaling is a function of talking things out. there's absolute truth to talking things out, and journaling is your opportunity to talk to yourself, to get those things out. And so it's vital in hypnosis, like a lot of the work that I do in hypnosis with my clients. But I'm glad you brought that up, because if you don't have anybody that you trust, then you can just be with the paper. And you can be with your own thoughts and get them out, so you're actually able to see that. But to intentions, one of the things for me is that I do a lot of things, and things are different than people. And so for me, 2026 is about even more powerfully standing for people wherever they are. We'll talk a little bit about my background in incense, but I hold a title called Komoto, and Komoto means it means master of ceremonies in the incense tradition. But essentially, what it is it's that to stand for people wherever they are. And in other words, lead people without imposing my will. And so when you're around people and you're just creating space for them to show up how they want to show up, that is a natural part of healing. And so I think it does relate to journaling.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. But let's introduce John. John is here from the Special Operations Charity Network. He is one of the Grunt Style Foundation instructors who comes to the retreats, the integration retreats, and I've seen him help so many veterans, including myself. And what is so fascinating, and I want Will, you to share a little bit about John as well, but what I love the most is that I didn't realize how much smell impacts trauma and can trigger trauma. And I guess I knew that when I smelled burning plastic or burning hair, that there were specific things about Iraq that came back to me that I wasn't doing a good job of letting go of. And the most fascinating gift John's given me is the ability to realize that smells can heal. It just blew my mind, like popped my mind completely, that indigenous cultures for tens of thousands of years have used particular fragrances and scents in order to heal trauma, which just completely blew my mind. Will, tell me about how John's worked with you over the years. I know you guys go back.
Well, it has been awesome to work with you, John, over time, and you are the most interesting man in the world.
Yes.
And my main takeaway, the thing that always fascinates me with John, if you actually know John's background, like it's crazy. He's got like all these, and none of them are like overly mundane or boring or little. They're all like really big things. And really captivating. Takes a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity. It's work with the government. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
But the thing that jumps out at me is that he's very serious about meditation and self-care and incense. And I mean, this is a really special modality. I work in the world of plant medicines and amphibian medicines and all of that. And, in this animistic, base, which is kind of all that's built on, one of the key components that makes all that thing drive for the folks that are like actually doing that work, and they're not, boulder hippies, pretending, to play plastic shamans and all that.
Sure.
One of the common things is scent, and there's bitters and there's sweets, and you have things that cleanse and you have things that attract. And that's kind of the core, element in that work. When we go to the Amazon, one of the first things you do in the morning is you take this steam sauna with bitters if you're working on purging and healing, and you're going to be setting, going into early parts of ceremony or something like that. And then you're using sweets, in the sauna. It's very pleasant smelling. And that's to attract, the more positive side in that work. And then we look at our friends, that we work with a lot on Pine Ridge with the Lakota. Same thing. They have the sacred herbs, and there are herbs that, again, they cleanse and then they attract. So this is common. Now, when I look at what John's doing, this is like going from, the core elements to a very refined process of how all these things play together and work together. So the fact that a guy like John is so taken with a modality and has spent so much time to really, truly understand it and work with it and really has a crazy granular understanding of some pretty deep rabbit holes. that captures my imagination and makes me want to set up and listen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like in him being the most interesting person in the world, not only has he taught me the most about fragrance and incense and meditation of anybody I've met, he also, my other favorite three things about him. Are you ready? You don't even know what I'm going to say. His CIA work after 9/11.
I never worked for the CIA. No, I'm serious. I never worked for the CIA, and I've never said that.
The 3-letter agency that you worked for after 9/11, the radio disc jockey, esteemed radio disc jockey, Civil War author.
There you go.
Civil War author. Those are my 3 favorite Johns right there. And then you add the one that knows everything about incense. And
well, you know, that's a trait that I've seen that is common on the people that I really admire. And those people, you among them, John, I absolutely include you in this class. These are people I consider mentors, role models, examples, the type of people that I want to strive to be more like. You know, these are successful, driven people. And one thing that they all have in common, at least the ones that are on the top of my shelf list, but that's, you know, aligns more with kind of my worldview of thinking. Other people may view different, but they all have a deep connection to themselves, and they're all doing, they know how to do self-work, and more importantly, they're all medicine carriers in their own right that are presenting and bringing this to other people to help heal people and get them plugged in. So there's a interesting recipe that goes in that makes up the character of these men and women that, you know, I really hold in high esteem.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah, John, you tell us about your latest work, Special Operations Charity Network, and the other things you're working on with Shihan.
First of all, I want to say that you guys are way too kind to me, and I am grateful for your kind comments. But again, to set the stage, yes, I was a defense and intelligence contractor, but I never worked for any of the 3-letter agencies you described, or maybe I did. I don't know. But anyway, you know, I started studying incense when I was 9 years old, incense and martial arts when I was 9. And what was interesting is that when I got involved with the Special Operations Charity Network, we'll start there, is that this came out of a relationship with a retired command sergeant major by the name of Mark Quinn. Some of you know him.
Good friend.
You know, and Mark and I have known each other for 30 years, and he calls me a number of years ago. He's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "You do this thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "I know it can help people. Will you get involved?" And I said, "Yes." And so I have an opportunity to work with active military veterans and first responders in using fragrance to re-regulate the system. So a minute ago, Hugh, you were talking about burning hair and burning trash, right? Well, here's something about our sense of smell that gets forgotten about. Our sense of smell has always been associated with mysticism and kind of this mystery, right? Because of olfactory habituation, what I mean by that is that when you walk into a house and you smell your house or smell somebody else's house, if the fragrance doesn't change, how long do you notice the smell?
Pretty quickly you acclimatize to it, right?
Exactly.
If it's not really pungently negative, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's about anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute. And this is based on our fight or flight mechanism, is that we only notice a change when a state change occurs. And so because of olfactory habituation, you will acclimate to whatever the environment is around you. So for your entire life, and I literally mean the moment that you were born up to now, you have been collecting scents across your entire life. And so when something traumatic happens, whether you're in combat, whether you are having an emotional reaction to something, whether somebody drove their car into my house when I'm having breakfast, when we have an emotional experience that is greater than we're able to handle in our normal operating way of being, it locks into our brain. And so, we've all had this experience from a mundane level where we walk into a building and it reminds us of third grade, or somebody walks past us and it reminds us of a past partner, or, in many cases of those that are listening, and watching this, is that if they've been in combat and they have smelled burning hair, burning bodies, not to be too graphic, but, it triggers, right? And so when we get back and go back into regular, society, normal living, is that when that diesel truck drives past us, you're like, oh, and you're right back in it. And Helen Keller talked about how her sense of smell could transport her 20 years and 2,000 miles in a single instant. And that's absolutely true. So to give you one of the experiences, and the work I do in hypnosis specifically, my work or my specialty is fragrance hypnosis, which, by the way, I love the fact that I'm looking at a frog that is burning incense on one of your images as I'm looking at this. But Hugh, one of your favorite fragrances is myrrh, and so I've got Camophora myrrha in my warmer, not burner, and so that's what's in the space right now. But let's do a little work together. So, what do you notice about this fragrance for you? Just what do you notice?
It's almost overwhelming. It's hard to explain, but the way the smell is coming in, it feels like very sacred and very calming. And I can't explain that because I'm live on a podcast. I shouldn't feel a sacred, calming sense right now. I was excited, to go live, but I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm in a very light, airy kind of, there are no worries, there are no concerns, that's just the sense I get, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So let's get a little scientific just so that we can take the conversation a little deeper. So because of our limbic system is essentially about 8 components that relates to our memories, our emotions, our feelings. We do everything emotionally, right? And so there is something, a quote that I use in my work when we talk about questioning and going back to journaling. It's like the person who controls the questions controls the emotions. The person who controls the emotions controls the outcome. And so it's our job to find a way to recenter ourselves, control our emotions. Balance, exactly. And I do that through a series of hypnosis techniques, meditation techniques, but let me give you something specifically tangible. So because our sense of smell is the only sense that does not pass through the thalamus, which is another part of our limbic system, our thalamus, every sense that we have, our touch, our sight, our smell, our smell is the only one that does not pass through this relay station called the thalamus. And so when you smell something, you're actually experiencing reality as reality.
Present moment.
Right. Not as it was filtered. In other words, when you're looking at me and I'm looking at you, or I'm looking at Will, right? I may have a preconceived notion about guys who wear hats, or I might have from my years in radio, right? When I see headphones, I'm like, oh, I'm back in my radio days. But when we look at each other, like guys who wear ties, you already have an always way of listening about what you think about guys who wear ties. But I'm the director of strategic operations at Lifetime Media, which is a national footprint media company that works internationally. I do strategy and I do sales. And so the people that I'm going to interact most of the time with are people that are going to be in ties or some kind of business attire, right?
Sure.
And so as we start to understand and acclimate to the reality around us, it becomes very important that we understand about how do we perceive the world and how does that perception lead to our emotions and how does that emotions lead to our outcome.
It's a story and beliefs, and then there's a story we're telling ourselves about that person with a hat.
Yeah.
And then that leads to the words and actions we take around that person.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's all based on, can we get back to present instead of the beliefs in the story, and just be present with that person to see, what they have to offer or what they have to teach us.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a former SOF operator that I work with, and when I do my hypnosis work, we never name names. So, I've told the story a lot on different, shows, but I love this because, he came to me one day and he's like, look, I think what you do is, and I'm like, okay, well, he goes, and the only reason why I'm here is because a general told me that I should work with you. And I said, okay. And so I gave him a document called the Natural Preference Survey document. And he goes, why am I getting this? And I said, because I need to know what you like and what you don't like about fragrances, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use fragrance to take you before the trauma. Come to find out, this gentleman, he grew up rural. He grew up on a farm. And so there's a whole number of fragrances related to that that allow me to then take you from a mental standpoint back to that place that then starts to uncollapse any of the emotional connections that he may have to different things that he experienced when he was operational. And so this then becomes a balance between the past, the future, and the present. And so then by doing that, by re-experiencing these things in a safe way, then we're able to release them. Again, we keep going back to the journaling, but it is very similar to that. If we do not talk these things out, if we do not express these things out of ourselves, then those things actually begin to attack our body.
We're holding on to them. Yeah, your body stores the trauma, right?
Exactly.
Do we have any clips of John doing his work? That'd be fantastic to show people, because I'm sure people are thinking, like, what are we talking about when we talk about interacting with fragrance, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
healing trauma. What's that look like, you know?
Yeah.
So you question. I want to insert there real quick before I lose the thought. Are you deprogramming that connection on the sense of smell, like through like an exposure therapy by way of the fragrance?
Yeah,
so it stops to have that power.
Yeah, so it can be that. I mean, because each and every one of us are so individualized, and yet there are these recurring motifs around our human experience, is that it is. My work is best done one-on-one, where I get a good idea of who you are, where you've been, but also committed to where you're going. In other words, there are some people that love their trauma, and their trauma, works very well for them. I work with an executive of a very well-known company, and we do hypnosis together. And this particular CEO, he goes, I want to stop being an a-hole. He goes, I've been leading my business for 30 years as an a-hole.
Oh man, I've got some incense that'll help with that.
Right? Yeah. Well, and I said, but we started to look at how a way of being would be where he wasn't operating in that way, and it startled him, because he was like, this is a whole new way of operating for me, and my go-to has always been to bring the hammer down. And I said, I understand that, but when you're talking about shifting your way of being, that actually works for the new environments that you're in, you have to understand that you can always reinvent yourself. Celebrities do this all the time. I mean, Lady Gaga did not come out of the womb as Lady Gaga, and then one day I'm going to create this for myself. And so there is a little bit of imagination, and there is a little bit of intention setting about who am I going to be. And, in other words, it's like, what am I committed to? Well, I stand for the enlightenment of all people. And I sometimes don't use that word because that's enlightenment is a loaded word. But what that means is that I'm standing for you reintegrating all these pieces of yourselves that get outside, that interrupt with who you want to be, by reintegrating that. And I'm still integrating my stuff. I mean, this doesn't end, right?
Yeah, I call it heart shrapnel, because anytime something, like some of the deepest betrayals that I've experienced in relationships, like you said before, when something gets so overwhelming that you can't emotionally handle it at the time, I feel as if a piece of my heart, literally a piece of shrapnel of my heart, like fragmented out. And now needs to be, at some point, I need to bring it back in and reintegrate it back into who I am, because I had to set it aside. I just couldn't even deal with the betrayal at that moment, know? And I'm just talking about, being cheated on, being dumped, different things like that. I'm not even talking about anything that extreme, but still, I'm so sensitive that it affected me that much, where it's like I'm just now starting to reintegrate some of those different traumas,
Yeah, well, I love that you use the word heart, because in the Japanese tradition, and I'll connect this to the samurai, who were the elite warriors of Japan, right? So heart, makoto, there's a Japanese expression called makoto, which means sincerity of heart. And it's like, we have romanticized in many ways the samurai, the Civil War, things like that. To think that, these warriors are, all I am as a warrior. Well, no, you're always balancing your fear. You're always balancing every part of this humanness. And so when I'm working with the military, or when I'm working with the IC, the intelligence community, or when I'm working with different groups regarding this, I cannot walk into the room wearing white flowing robes. and beads, because my credibility doesn't stand on its own, right? And so you have to be and speak into the listening that best supports. So back to the samurai for a second. How I started working with these different groups was to remind them that in the samurai tradition, which was about 950 years, depending on who you ask, is that, you had these elite warriors that would go and do what they needed to do. But about 300 years into their tradition, you started seeing the emergence of things like flower arranging, tea ceremony, incense ceremony, because this was a way to re-regulate yourself. And then
so like reintegrating back after a gruesome battle
exactly
would be done using different modalities.
Exactly. And so really not that much different from today. So when we talk about integration weekend, which happens every year, and we just finished the second year, which I do want you to talk about that again, because I think 2026 is going to be incredible.
Unbelievable.
But when you are an elite warrior, if you don't learn to regulate, I'm being broad here, okay? But you will find yourself at the bottom of every bottle. You will find yourself perhaps doing, self-harm or harm to others if you are not regulating yourself. And so when you start getting into some of the techniques that soft operators are learning, whether it is, combat breathing, box breathing, things like that, you're beginning to modulate yourself in a way where you can handle both sides of the spectrum.
Balancing.
Exactly. And so back to our soft operator who I work with, is that I started to understand which fragrances would take him before he was operational. And then that allowed him to start to uncollapse these things. And then after a couple of sessions, he finally said to me, he goes, "I'll be honest, I'm sure you already picked up on it, but I thought what you did was BS. And I want you to know that I have never been more relaxed in my life." And
amazing.
And when your nervous system is so used to being dysregulated, being relaxed is terrifying for people. What's your experience based on what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, stillness for me in my meditation practice took years to get comfortable being alone with my own thoughts. And I actually tried to do it in my house, sitting around meditating, whatever, like a Buddhist monk. Didn't work for me at all. When I got out and started walking in nature, then my mind started quieting and I was able to be alone with my thoughts. So my sense of being at peace and stillness was still movement. It still required my body to move. Only recently, and I'm about 5 years in, but only recently have I gotten to the point where I can literally sit and be at peace in stillness and feel good. But that's when I kind of knew that I was healing, like really. Yeah. That's when I knew that, I wouldn't say I'm healed, but I knew I'd come a really long way when I was able to be at peace and be in stillness instead of what's the next Netflix show, what's the next thing on my phone, whatever. Well,
when so what you're hitting at there is the difference between fixed and discursive meditation. Both are valid. So fixed meditation would be sitting in seiza, or would be sitting in what you might look at as the meditation pose that people know. But the other aspect of this is discursive, meaning movement. So golf can be a meditation. Hunting can be a meditation. Bicycle riding can be a meditation, because we've all had this experience, not just us in the room, but those that are listening and watching. We've all had that experience when we are so wholeheartedly into the deed of what we're doing, is that the game plays the game. The dancer is the dance. The poet is the poem. And that's ultimately what we want. Because we as human beings have a cognitive mind, and what we're thinking about is that we are oftentimes always thinking about what we're doing. But when we find ourselves in flow, the Taoist would call it wei wu wei, doing not doing. In the 90s, you started to hear the word flow show up, right?
Flow state, yeah.
Flow state,
when
right?
I was in the corporate world, it was all about trying to get into the flow state.
Exactly, right? But I mean, these are concepts that have different names that continue to repeat themselves, for, thousands of years. Like for example, some of you may have listened to the telepathy tapes, and the telepathy tapes is all about non-verbal autistics developing different powers of mind. Well, if you focus on something long enough, you will develop different powers of mind. This sounds strange, and I normally don't talk about this, but when you are doing things like incense and you're doing it correctly and you're doing it 100% naturally, part of your brain shuts down, and then you're able to be open to other frequencies, vibrations, and thoughts that are out there. And there's nothing.
It opens your mind. Literally, the smell.
It literally
what you're
opens your
describing.
mind. Yeah.
You're describing a smell coming in, bypassing your storytelling brain, going straight to the part of your brain that allows you to open your mind.
Yeah, and that's called the rhinencephalon. And the rhinencephalon is the smell brain, the reptile brain. It is the oldest part of our brain, but you're actually experiencing reality as reality. Well, what are your thoughts?
I think that's totally helpful, and it's great context to understand, stuff that fascinates me anyway.
Right.
My one of my dear friends, Boone Cutler, who just passed away recently. Our final conversation on the phone. He was out in Eastern Europe doing things, and he found himself at a monastery. And he got a hold of me and called and said, "Hey, man, this is where I'm at. And I'm at this monastery, and there's these monks, and they're doing Gregorian chant, and there's this radical incense." And it's like, yeah, it's great, and I love that stuff. And he just, no, you don't understand, I'm onto something. And he starts going down this rabbit hole about, I guess he had done a lot of research on why he was feeling what he was feeling in that environment, which the incense and the meditation, exactly what we're talking about. He said, this is, it's disengaging your default mode network.
Exactly.
And it's allowing you to bypass that and actually explore.
Wow.
And this is an amazing modality. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I had been turned on to that. Now, this is not going to sound anywhere near as sweet and sacred as what probably the conversation goes. But I like to do this YouTube video called "How to Boost Your High," and what I found, man, is I'm dead serious now. I'm dead serious. And it doesn't. You don't have to use cannabis with it, but anything that's relaxing, incense would be wonderful with it.
Yeah, they're
But
just
it's
funny.
how that
they're funny videos.
well, it's what it's doing is the way the video is structured, the music that it's taking, the images that it's taking, all these different things that it's showing you. It is that coupling with whatever this modality that you're wanting to use as part of your meditation while doing it, it's disengaging the default mode network. Is this similar? Is this what we're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying.
Wow.
Because here's the thing. If we don't set boundaries for ourselves, we as human beings are so good at acclimating that we will acclimate ourselves into horrible relationships. We will normalize, working in a toxic environment because we're so good at adapting.
Sure.
And so that's why it becomes, when you're in the military, you don't get to set your boundaries. Someone's setting your boundaries for you.
Right.
And so, and because you are driven so hard and you're having to balance, your own energy levels. I mean, as those energy levels drop, then your ability to fight those boundaries ends. And so that's where you see the shift in going. And it's like,
you can kind of lose. You can kind of lose a sense of your authentic, unique, artistic self when you're in those environments.
Yeah.
And then you can lose touch with it for so long, you don't know how to re-engage with it.
Yeah. Well, same kind of thing. So go into the military, basic training. What's the first thing that they do to your hair?
You shave it off.
They shave it off. What's the first thing you do when you become a Buddhist monk?
Shave it off.
They shave it. So there is this connection between the two that you are not an individual. You are part of a unit. You're part of a group, right? Which can be good and bad, right?
Correct.
If it's positive, great. And if it's not, well, here's the thing, the reason why that I love the work that I'm doing as the founder of Shihan Wellness, and you guys can see more of this at shihan-wellness.com, but the work that I'm doing with the Special Operations Charity Network is that in many ways, I am supporting people, not helping, supporting people to re-find their individuality that represents who they are in the universe. And again, I don't mean to use these words like this, but I really do mean that.
Go for it.
Is that, what I'm speaking to with people is the part of you that goes on forever. Like I'm wearing my human suit, and I will wear my human suit for as long as I wear my human suit. One day it will fall away, and this essence inside of me will go wherever I go. Name it whatever you want. But when we begin to integrate the essence of us on the inside of our human suit and who we are to the outside world, this is when we start to move back into our own power. And I don't mean power over others. I mean our ability to feel comfortable in our own skin and be able to create space for others to be who they want to be. When I look to my training, and we didn't talk about this, but from the ages of 9 to 13, I studied incense and martial arts on my own. My mother was a hippie. My dad was a veteran. If you spend any amount of time with me, I am the perfect amalgamation between the two of those people.
You are,
right?
actually, yeah.
So at the age of 13, I had a friend whose parents were pretty famous, and they were bohemians, and, you know, they knew Liberace, and they knew all of these, you know, characters from the 70s, 80s. And so I would get invited to their house to do overnight sleepovers to basically entertain their son so that they could do whatever they wanted to do. Well, at 13 years old, I go downstairs and because for whatever reason, you had to get water on the first floor. I don't know. They lived in a 3-story 19th century house, but I walked into the kitchen, and his mother stopped me and turned to this woman and said, "Oh, you need to meet our son's friend, John." And she was like, "And why?" And she was like, "Oh, he's really into incense." And this woman, you suddenly saw it shift. And it's as clear for me as the lunch I had today, right? She looked at me, she says, "What do you know about incense?" And I said, "Well," and I said whatever I said at the age of 13. And she says, "What do you know about the Japanese tradition of incense?" And I said, "I know that it got to Japan through the Korean Peninsula around 1,500 years ago." She's like, "Oh, interesting. You know that." She said, "Would you like to learn it for real?" And so then I spent the next 10 years performing what we call shugyo. Shugyo means paying your dues. And there was a part of that time of that 10 years where I actually lived with my teacher. I cleaned floors, I did laundry, and then I learned the art of incense, kodo.
This kind of sounds like joining the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm not going to lie. This is like right up my alley.
Well, there is a frog burning incense right there on the wall.
This is right up my alley. Keep going.
So, you know, what I was able to do was learn what being a komoto means. And so, again, you know, I'm not out to be like the Tony Robbins of incense. I'm not out to be.
Why not?
Because you know what? Because here's the thing. There's people watching and listening to this right now who maybe only know incenses like Nag Champa, or they only know incenses like love and luck and money, right?
Yeah.
What you guys are experiencing in this room is none of
totally
that.
different.
It's totally different.
And we should
Next level.
foot stomp that, because I don't know how tight in on the camera we're getting on your tools and what we're working with here. Maybe we can get David to get one of the camera angles to zoom in on that, or set it up special or something, because it's impressive. And those are that's like your go kit. I've seen a lot of your real stuff that's amazing and jaw dropping.
Yeah.
This stuff is not what you buy at Spencer's Gifts.
No.
It is a totally different ball game. And for those, I wish you all could smell it, but you'll have to take my word for it. Our studio here right now is filled with the most incredible aromas right now.
Oh my gosh.
It is really
Next
something.
level. Next level. Next level.
Come see us at Integration again in the end of the summer, and come meet John for real. And I know you also tell us a little bit about that real quick, dude. There's other opportunities at Integration to come and engage in the work that John does. He works with Special Operations Trading Network, and you guys do a lot of these, don't you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways. So how I work with people outside of my media work is that I do hypnosis for folks. I do fragrance hypnosis. I travel all over the country. January 30th here in St. Louis, I'll do an event with a wonderful musician at Drawn Studios, where you'll have artists actually drawing as we do the whole incense journey and move that along. And again, let me also uncollapse something. When you think of incense, people still think of the 60s, and they still think of heavy smoke. How much smoke are you seeing in this room?
Next to none.
Right, next to none, right? Or when you do see it, it dissipates very quickly.
Yeah, there's a little
right?
bit coming off the bowl, because
Right.
I'm sure the camera didn't pick that up.
Right.
It comes off about yay far, and it's not even heavy.
Right. And so what we have is we have direct and indirect burning. Direct burning would obviously be smoking. Indirect is non-smoking. That's really what the Japanese developed over the course of 1,500 years. And so let me put a button on this whole story, is that over the course of 10 years, I would learn to become a komoto, which is to lead the kodo ceremonies. And there are so many different types of kodo ceremonies, but specifically around two different schools of incense. Throughout the Edo period, which is essentially 1603 to 1867, you had about 20 different types of incense schools, teaching people to be more like what we would call the Shino school, which is the fire school, more associated with the samurai samurai, or then we have the OE school, which is the poetical school, which is more associated with the aristocracy of Japan. But in both cases is that you're using these things to regulate your system. And so what I'm doing primarily with the Special Operations Charity Network, and even you guys with Integration Weekend, is that I'm showing more of the Shino school, which is our ability to that we are warriors. I mean, all of us are warriors in this society, and different aspects of it. But it's like we're fighting.
Definitely descended from warriors.
Yeah,
we can't deny that.
Right, but we are fighting stuff every day. Whether it's fighting our boss, whether it's fighting our landlord, whatever. But it's like the more that we can center ourselves and not just say it. You talked about the plastic shamans. Like it like when people. I'll tell the story. It's really funny. I can't tell you where I was because it'll give it away. But I showed up and this guy was like, yeah, cool. You're like the incense guy. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he was like, I've been doing incense for like 5 years. I'm like, right on. And he's like, yeah, I burned incense yesterday. And I'm like, cool. I go, like, what'd you burn? He goes, frankincense. And I said, which one? Frankincense? Yeah. I know, but which one? Frankincense, and so it's like the joke that I'm making here is that when you meet people that have been doing something for 40 some odd years, it's so integrated into my system that you wouldn't even know that I'm doing it. Like if you saw me from a distance wearing what I'm wearing, would you think that I'm a 44-year martial artist and incense, master? I don't mean to call myself that. I'm just saying, like, for the context of the conversation, right?
No.
But that's the whole point. The whole point is that if you have to wear who you want to be on your sleeve,
right,
you're not being that.
Right.
Because the minute that we fully integrate who we are, we no longer have to display it. And so
we just are.
We just are that, right? And so this is the reason why that a year into my training with my teacher, she said, okay, you've been training for a year. Going forward, I have no obligation to teach you unless you ask me a question. Now, I'm 14 years old. Think about how that shifts. In other words, if I don't ask her a question, I don't get any teaching. Do we ask questions in this culture?
No.
No, we absolutely don't, right? We make assumptions. We think that we know. And so, and we're a very arrogant culture because we think that we know because we read a book or we went down for a shaman weekend and came back and now I'm able to call myself a shaman. No offense to Reiki masters, but that's the whole thing. It's like the thing I think is interesting about Reiki masters is that it comes from the Japanese tradition, and in Japan or in Asia, you would never, ever call yourself a master.
You're always a student.
You're always a student, and that's part. And for you to call somebody a master, that's for you. That's not for me. And so that's why I was trepidatious about saying that for the sake of the conversation.
I got the point. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that Reverent Warriors and Special Operations Charity Network and Grunt Style Foundation, we have a bunch of joint events coming up. Yep. I know one of those is that we always work together on the 4th of July concert and fireworks. We always work together on the Integration 2026, which is the big Grunt Style Foundation retreat here in St. Louis. And we also are working together on the grand opening of the Jeff White Skate Park, which is going to be a skateboard contest, and there's going to be DJing and a bunch of other things at that. So let's get into the skateboard contest and talk a little bit about that. How did you get involved? And tell us more about the Jeff White Skate Park.
So a gentleman by the name of Johnny Feltz, who is a great dude. He's such a great dude. He's a veteran. I saw this on Facebook where it was like they were having a fundraiser for a gentleman who was KIA in Afghanistan, and he was a skateboarder, and his name is Jeff White.
There he is. You're looking at him. Yeah,
right there. Yeah,
25th Infantry Division.
Yes, and Johnny Feltz, he
rest in peace.
Yeah, and just like I went to the first event and I watched this guy get up there. Before he went into the military, they would all skate together, and the guy was fearless. They called him J-Dub, right? And
he looks like a fearless. Like if I was in a skateboard contest against him, I'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, like some of these old videos are really impressive, but as when Johnny came off stage, I said, "Hey, dude, you don't know who I am," and I said, "But I've been in media since the late '80s," and I said, I'm an MC, I'm a speaker, and I'm a skateboarder still. I mean, I'm in my 50s and I still skateboard.
Oh, you skateboard too?
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is why
You're ridiculous, man.
this is why he and I are such good
Yeah,
friends.
this is okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, true story. Back in 1987, when the Bones Brigade came through St. Louis, we had the only mini ramp in Sunset Hills. And so it was Tony Hawk, Mike Vallely, a bunch of the Bones Brigade guys, right? And we're like, "Do you guys want to come over and like skateboard with us?" And they were like, "Sure." And so I've got black.
Back then, they were in a van.
Right.
They were in like a big white
Right.
van, so they could
Right.
come to your house and
Yeah.
skate. Yeah.
Well, then 6 years later, when I got into radio, 6 or 8 years later, when I got into radio, when Tony Hawk was doing the Tony Hawk ride at Six Flags, you know, we brought him into the studio to interview him because I used to be a DJ at 105.7 The Point here in St. Louis. And I was like, "Do you remember when we were?" And he was like, "I totally remember." Well, so anyway,
Yeah, check out this deck.
So hold that up. So one of the things that they're doing to raise money for the lights for the skate park in Pacific, Missouri, is that they are selling these decks, and
They're ridiculous. I have one. I bought one myself. Yeah.
which number do you have? Do you know? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay, well, so mine here.
Yeah.
So mine is number 37 of 100.
Oh, that's sweet.
And so for $200, right?
Yep.
You get this collector's deck, and you're going to be contributing to the lights, so that these kids can go and they can express themselves. They can learn balance. They can learn all these different things because
It's meditation.
Exactly.
Skateboarding is meditation.
exactly.
We've tied it all
Yeah.
together, folks.
Well, that was my first experience because you are moving, but you're also standing still. And so there is a Japanese expression called shikaku, and shikaku means eye of the hurricane. So when you're on a skateboard and you're standing still, but you're moving, that is literally like you're in the center of the hurricane.
That's how I feel. I feel totally calm.
Yeah.
All my monkey brain's gone. And I just feel connected to the earth.
Yeah.
Which is funny because you have to be on concrete, but I feel connected to the planet when I'm skateboarding.
Yeah. Well, and so what's happening is that I'm on the board to put this together. We're making the final decisions on who's going to build it. We're probably going to break ground around May, and then anywhere between July and August of 2026 is when the skate park will open, and then Irreverent Warriors will obviously be a part of that. And I would love to.
There it is right there.
Oh yeah, there it is. And I would just love to see people, be involved in this because, different from those coming back from Vietnam, people want to be involved in veteran work. And I think it's so important, and not just to wear the badge and say you do it. I mean, actually do it. And this is a tangible way. For $200, you get a really great skateboard, and then, you can contribute to the growth of that. And it's not that. I mean, if you're inspired to work with Grunt Style, work with Grunt Style. If they're inspired to work with the Reverent Warriors, work with Reverent Warriors. If you're inspired to do our Find Your Tribe network at Special Operations Charity Network, for me, there is no competition because it's what's going to resonate with you.
That's right.
Absolutely.
You guys are great partners. Like I feel such an honor every year when you guys are like, "Hey, you want to instruct again at Integration?" I absolutely do. And I literally from the morning until the night, I will literally do incense.
Yes, you do.
I do it.
You're a marathon
You are
instructor.
a workhorse, man.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been so awesome getting deeper with John and learning more things
we
about
need to
John.
have John back in because we haven't even started to scratch the surface. And I just
know.
found out today that John was hanging out in Liberace's orbit and is still skateboarding at 50. I mean, super fascinating dude, man.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten into like the Steven Seagal stories and the Aikido and all of that kind of stuff. We need
Let's
to do
save
this
it.
again.
Yeah, we'll do a full one. Let's save it. But we do have a bunch of other Irreverent Warriors events coming up that we want to talk about a little bit. We've got a massive Puerto Rico hike that I attended last year, and it is just phenomenal. You have to make it there at least one time in your life. But the Puerto Rico hike, Audie and his team down there do a phenomenal job putting that on. That's coming up. Fort Lauderdale is our huge hike down in South Florida. That's always a really big one, a really good one. And then this weekend is the Silkies Snow Hike here in St. Louis, Missouri.
That's right.
We've got the meet and greet tonight with a special guest DJ, and it's going to be 90s themed. And then tomorrow, starting out and going to the zoo, we're going to be interacting with the reptiles, the primates, and the seals and the sea lions.
That's just the hikers.
Yep.
So like no different than this room, right? The reptiles.
Yes. Yeah, basically. Then we're going to be going to the art museum. We're going to be hearing from Will Wisner from Grunt Style Foundation. Then we'll be going to, we have a ton of things lined up. Science Center, an arcade. The Korean War Memorial is going to be really, really, really cool.
I heard we even have a special musical element to that.
Yep. We've got a bagpiper lined up from the VFW, so that should be good. And we've got a Korean War veteran coming to the hike that has 2 silver stars and 2 bronze stars with a V. So he's no joke. So we'll try to make sure that he doesn't hurt anybody. No, I'm just kidding. But
Get that man some incense, man.
Yeah, but we've got a lot going on with the Reverend Warriors, got a lot going on with Grunt Style Foundation, and thank you so much for John with the Special Operations Charity Network and all the things he does. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been a fantastic episode. It's going to be a fantastic weekend, and everybody out there, have a great weekend if we don't see you. And think about using incense when you spend some time with your thoughts, contemplating or reflecting.
Yeah, and get over there to the Special Operations Charity Network event. Come sit with John. Come out to Integration with us in September and sit with John there. We've got a lot going on. And again, man, if you're in St. Louis, get down to Blueberry Hill tonight at 6 o'clock for the pre-show mingler we're doing there. That'll be at 6. And then tomorrow, if you're in St. Louis and you haven't already got a ticket, go on to reverentwarriors.org, get yourself a ticket. And we are linking up at 9 a.m. at the Turtle Park, I think, right?
That's right, outside of the zoo. Yeah, in front of Pat Connolly's Tavern. Yeah,
right on.
Yeah, and if you come tonight, make sure you dress 1990s.
Yeah, get you some one of those crazy Jinkos. Wear your Jinkos
and your chain wallet.
All right.
Stay
waxy, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.